What's up, YouTube? Thanks for joining today's Top Shelf Talk. We got a lot of good stuff in today's episode, including what motivates people to want to become bartenders, and more importantly, what makes people not want to bartend anymore. Thanks for joining us here on today's Top Shelf Talk. Here you're going to learn about the fundamentals of building business through the lens of bartending, where you can learn how to build brand, drive traffic, and listen to learn to some of the best people in the industry, from bartenders to bar managers and even our prospective bartenders of the future. Before we get started, don't forget to hit us up on Instagram and give us a follow on Twitter. And now for the episode you've been waiting for. What's up, Top Shelf Nation? Thanks for joining us here tonight. I've got a very good friend of mine, special guest coming that we go back to 2011 that we met, started working together, got to know each other, and actually worked really well together. So here's my friend Erroll. Erroll, how are you doing today?
I am doing all right. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you for asking. So Erroll, why don't you give us a little bit of context on you, give us that origin story, where you came from, how you grew up, and then ultimately where you ended up and how we met.
Well, first, I want to say I can't believe that 2011 was 9 years ago. 2000 does not seem like it was 20 years ago, but anyway, I started working at Applebee's in Folsom when that existed once upon a time, solely out of an interest to have a second job and make a little extra money. Started as a host, worked my way up, and when you become a server,
let's go further back than that. That's like how you got into the industry. Let's go a little bit further back. What kind of kid were you growing up? What kind of kid were you in high school? What brought you into the industry altogether? Like the origin story, like comic book issue number 1.
Well, see, that's kind of funny because they almost really aren't related at all. I was always a very shy kid that continued into middle school, that continued into high school. I had my close-knit group of friends, of course, but outside of that, never really talked to anybody, didn't really consider myself, I definitely wasn't a social butterfly. If I went to a party or something like that, I was definitely the one just, either with my friend group or just off to the side by myself. Yeah.
Like observing people and kind of the interactions between people?
Yeah, for sure. And seeing if there were people that I knew through other people, were they acting how I thought they would act, and just that kind of thing. But I was definitely keeping to myself. So going from that to working in the food industry was kind of a complete 180. But it started years after I was out of high school. 5 years after high school. Worked for my parents.
Sorry, did you go to high school like in the Sacramento region, or because I think you were born and raised in LA, or born in LA? Parents
born in Fresno, lived in Santa Barbara and LA, and middle school and high school were in Folsom.
Okay, for those of you listening, Erroll's like a diehard
outside of
Dodger
Sacramento.
Fan. So if you want to stop listening right now, I totally get it. I understand. Sorry, go ahead. I had to throw that in there.
But what about all of the other
LA
LA sports teams I follow? Yeah,
I'm pissed. I mean, but to his, in all fairness, meeting him in 2011, we talked in diehard baseball conversations and diehard Dodger fan through the shitty times too, not just, a recent bandwagon fan. So, when the Dodgers were rebuilding, what were those shitty owners that just sold back then? What were they called? I can't remember their names anymore.
Neither can I. Oh my gosh.
I've
tried to wipe that from my brain. Don't bring that back up.
This is how far back we talked. He was a Dodger fan. We talked Dodgers.
Frank McCourt.
McCourt. So that's
Oh,
that's how far back we had these conversations. He's not a bandwagon fan. This is like a legit fan, that moved up to Northern California from there. So give him a little bit of credit. We're gonna let him have his victory. Fuck, I hate the Dodgers right
well,
now so much.
I don't really have any victories to celebrate thanks to the Astros and the Red Sox cheating, but that's a story for another time. Um, I know where I left off, but I mean, from the time I graduated high school till the time I started in the food industry, there isn't really
What'd
much
you
of
do? You said
interest
about
there.
5 years. What was that? What did you do during that 5 year gap?
I took a few classes at the local community college, but I wasn't. I was doing the whole, I don't know what I want to do, so I'll do it eventually, and was definitely taking my time with that. I wasn't giving it the focus that people typically should.
Well, it's
We
funny that
had
you
a
bring that
family
up, and
business.
I'm glad you brought that up. Like, I know what you mean. Is like that feeling you get out of high school. It's like, okay, you need to start getting your shit together. What do you want to do with your life? But you still don't know. Like,
Yeah,
I feel that on like a whole nother level because I'm like, I'm 35 now. Like, I just turned 35. I think it's 35. Let me do math. Yeah, I'm 35, and God, I still feel like I don't even know what the hell I want to do with my life. Like, I did a major shift, a change of industries at the age of 33, going from, managing restaurants and managing bars for 13 years to, well, I think I'll go into IT, a huge shit, 33 years old. That's not something that, at least our parents, growing up, that's not okay in, for older generations looking at like 33, you're past your prime at that point. But I totally
right.
understand what you mean. It's like I don't know what I want to do.
Yeah, see, I think that's kind of ironic that the older generations look at us and say, when you finish high school, you should kind of know what you want to do already, because for the most part, people don't really know who they are, so to speak, until at least the age of 30. And people can and do definitely still change after that. So to go back to being 18 or 17 whenever you finish high school and you're supposed to know what you're going to do for the next 50 or 60 years of your life, I mean, not only is that scary and intimidating, that's just a little
Not realistic.
illogical to me. I mean, yeah, you can have in mind things that you want to do, but I still feel to this day, if you presented me with a list of jobs and I didn't have to go to school for any of them. So I'm not saying the jobs that literally do not require schooling. I'm saying literally every job out there, if I could just get hired on tomorrow, list of a million jobs, whatever. There aren't a lot that I would cross off because I like science. I like math. I like computers. I like chemistry. Kind of falls under science, I guess, pretty much. But there aren't a lot of jobs. If you were to say, well, what about this? I would get no, that's not at all. So to be 18 and say, this is the one job. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm going to major in. Some people do get to do that, and that's amazing for them, but that's not everyone. That's
I'm
just
even
not
kind of
everyone.
I'm even slightly interested to what that kind of decision looks like 30 years down the road. When people have had the opportunity, I feel like that decision is based off a lack of opportunity. For me, my biggest regret was probably, when I turned 21, I immediately I had the job lined up to become a restaurant manager before I turned 21. It just couldn't be implemented. I couldn't go into effect until I turned 21. But that was 21 to 33. That's all I did. That's all I knew. Manage restaurants, manage bars, and that was pretty much it. You know, but after 33, deciding that I probably honestly, like my gut, I knew at like age 28, that's not what I wanted to do anymore. I remember when I worked, as a GM in Gold River, 2 years before I left, talking to our area director, I think we were doing like this think we were out on the golf course, actually. I was running around the cart with him, and I told him, like, look, like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. I'm considering applying for a state job because I want a regular work schedule. You know what I mean? I want that work-life balance. But I had a great relationship with him at the time, and, I let him talk me out of it, which, it worked out for a little bit, but only in the short term, not in the long term. It took to, when I was no longer working directly for him, I got a new area director, got put into a new situation, different context. That's when I was like, God, like, I had to get out, but I think that, getting out of high school is like, now you need to start tasting things. Now you need to try 1,000 different things for the next 10 years. That's really, that I think will expose you to what you really want to do.
Yeah, when you're sitting in your senior English class reading Shakespeare, you're not sitting there saying, you know what, I'm going to manage a restaurant. Like that's not what 18, 17-year-olds are doing. A few might already know, maybe they already are working in the industry and they think it's fun and they want to move up to that. But nobody's really sitting there already knowing that that's something that they want to do. You have to definitely get your feet wet in it and have a little experience with it. See if it's something you like.
Absolutely. A lot of it's glamorized too. Like, I noticed that if you have a friend that works in the industry, they're trying to tell you how amazing it is, how much money they make. They make it up to this glamorous thing. You get in the industry, now they go to a different restaurant or a different bar, and it's how amazing it is at that other place versus where they were before. And it's always over glamorizing, I guess it's embellishing a little bit of trying to make it sound like the grass is greener on the other side. But I didn't move around too much, but I saw enough of people hopping from place to place, ultimately regretting their decision to know that, embellishing how much greener the grass is on the other side, that it's just embellishment. That's what it is.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind when it comes to hosting, serving, bartending, any of the non-management positions, kitchen staff. Well, if we're talking money, that's serving and bartending. So from that point of view, I could sit here and say, well, I made this last night, I made this tonight, and other people would say, wow, that's, if you work 5 nights a week, you're making this much money, and oh, wow, that's amazing. And then you have to remember, well, I don't get insurance. It's one night, but I don't get insurance through work. I don't get dental through work. I don't get retirement. I don't get paid time off. So you have that, when it comes to time off, you have that double-edged sword of, I want to go to Hawaii for a week. So not only do I have to request the time off, have it be approved, I'm losing out on 5, 6, 7 days worth of income, and I had to have saved money, which anyone has to do, I suppose, but I had to have saved money from my previous shifts to not only cover taking time off, but to cover the money I'm going to spend on vacation. And I know a lot of other people have jobs where, you're going to spend money when you're on vacation, but I feel like it's a little different when you don't have the protections of built-in paid time off and built-in benefits and all that kind of thing.
Super interesting that you bring that up. I was talking to a friend of mine. It was probably about a month ago, actually, and I'm genuinely surprised that by now, at least from the position of a bartender, that especially chain restaurants have not started to integrate benefits on top of that salary, because from a management perspective, one of the biggest blows that a restaurant or a bar can have is to lose one of their main bartenders, lose one of their primary bartenders. But I've heard that argument before too, where, I don't get vacation time, I don't get, retirement. And that's, when you're 18, well, I guess not 18, when you're like 21, 22, 23, first bartending, a lot of people aren't thinking that way. But when you start getting into 28, 30, 35, 40, and you're still bartending, you start thinking about, what about vacation time? What about, retirement plans and benefits like that. And I'm really fascinated that some of the chain restaurants, because quote unquote it's not an industry standard, it hasn't been adopted yet, because that's, I mean, retaining your core bartending base is like such an impact. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I haven't done a cost benefit analysis or anything like that. I'm sure it's been considered,
You
but
haven't done that yet?
I haven't done that yet. No.
See, I think, you mentioned maybe essentially what you were getting at was if you have someone that is probably going to be a long-term bartender for you who's there 5 days or 5 nights a week, trying to get them set up on a benefit insurance program, what have
Treat
you.
them like a manager is
But
what I'm saying. Like offer them the same benefit package you would give a manager, because why is that bartender to me, I mean, from a management perspective, and this is like me pulled out of the equation now, non-biased, because I was a bar manager. I was never a bartender. The bartenders are the ones generating revenue. They're the ones bringing in guests. They're the ones building regulars. They're the ones, you know what I mean? They're making sure that their seats are full. Like I'm not doing shit. I'm doing inventory maybe once a week and telling the bartender what they're doing wrong. You know what I mean? But I'm not generating any revenue as a manager. So why am I getting a greater benefit package than the one that's actually generating the sales? Why does that person treated as a minimum wage employee, the same as a host? Now, obviously, they're getting tips at a much greater rate than the host, or a server, but what that just it doesn't make sense to me. That's where the big disparity is in my eyes from the outside looking in.
well, I think the fact that we were tipped employees, that right there is probably the biggest stumbling block to go from having nothing taken care of to having certain things covered. Because I know we didn't necessarily have this here in California, but a lot of other states, they're typically making $2.13 be as tipped employees. A lot of people get $0 on their paychecks, or maybe less than $100. So if you're corporate and you're saying, well, we have to take out this much for your medical, and we have to take out this much for your dental, and set aside money for paid time off and all these kinds of things, if they're not paying you in the first place, they would literally have to take a loss to chip into those things. And let's just say there probably aren't any corporations that are willing to do that.
So you think it's like,
So I
you know,
think
when you start
for the
looking at like
serving,
national chains, you think they're looking at, you know, Alabama and Arkansas and Nebraska, like that's the baseline, not California is the baseline. I think because it's a perspective now. Now you're talking like it's a perspective game.
I think so, because I mean, really how cost of living exists for us is the menu and nothing else outside of that. And by that I mean almost every other country in the world. I don't have a list, but this won't catch too many people off guard when I say almost every other large country in the world, uh, their tips are not percentage based. And the more I started thinking about that, the longer I was serving, the longer I was bartending, it did seem kind of strange, because if you have two people, you have a businessman who's out of town for work, and he comes in and he's had a rough day, rough whatever. He wants to have a couple top shelf margaritas, best thing you've got. And he gets this fat steak. He's treating himself. It's amazing. He's really nice, but he's not one for conversation. Just check on him, make sure he's good. That's all you need. Well, 2 drinks and a big steak, his total ends up being $60. All right, 20%. So he's going to leave you $12. And you didn't work that hard for him, so to speak. And then you've got this other person who wants water, and oh, your chips and salsa have free refills. Awesome. So you're over there every 3 minutes. Oh, you need more water? Okay. Oh, you need more chips? Okay. Oh, you ready for more water? Oh, you need salsa? Okay. Oh, now you need chips. Could have done that at the same time I got you more salsa, but okay. His total ends up being $5, and if you're lucky to get 20% off that, you made $1. And which one did you work harder for? Okay, the chips and salsa in the water. The restaurant, of course, sees Mr. Steak and Margarita Man as the better customer, because on a per guest basis, that's obviously a better sale. He very well could have been in and out faster, so you're able to turn that table faster. But from the server, if you are trying to treat everyone the same, you have to give them the same level of service, and okay, you make a little less money over here than you do over there. Now that same steak and margarita dinner, California, it costs this much, whereas in some of these other states, it's not going to cost as much. So tips are really the only cost of living aspect that we have in the job. We don't really have any other benefits to speak of.
How much of that did you think about when you were first getting into the industry versus towards the end of the industry? I mean, so you were probably about what, 23 when you started serving, bartending, things like that. How much did you think of it then versus now, or towards the end of your tenure?
Well, in the beginning, it was just I went from hosting to doing to-goes to serving, and then not long after serving, I started bartending also. So the serving bartending time in the very beginning, it was, man, look at the money I'm making compared to what I was just a few months ago as a host. This is awesome. Now I see why people want this job, and those kinds of things. And then the more you learn about it, like what I just said about what people are ordering, and that's a large part of what tips are based on, that's something that you start to pick up. Just like with any job, the longer you're there, the more things you see, the more you learn, the more you're seeing through other people's eyes, what your coworkers are telling you, and even managers, just everyone that you're coming into contact with, that you work with, even if they're in the same position, the same job or not, they still have their own story. This person's worked here for 4 years. This person's worked here for 20 years, and you're still only a host, or you're only a server, or whatever. And maybe that's what they want, or maybe this is a second job for them. Some people do make careers out of serving, out of bartending, and some don't. Maybe the ones that don't make a career out of it, maybe they just want a few extra bucks on the side. So you know what? That table stiffed me. It sucks, but this whole job is bonus money anyway. Then on the flip side, you've got people going, I'm not going to make rent unless I make $150 tonight.
I'm fascinated by that difference, because there's a delta right there that, you talked about the server that had been there for 20 plus years. If they're married and their spouse has a great job with amazing benefits, they're siphoning those benefits off of that other half. But for the people that aren't, that's where there's a huge disparity. Is like, the people, it almost seems like the people that have been there for 20 years can afford to be there for 20 years. They have almost a luxury to be there for 20 years. The people that don't, or aren't at that point in their life yet, or don't have, that other half to lean on, there's a little bit more urgency to, hey, I need to find something that is going to provide me that.
Yeah. If you want to make a career out of it, odds are you want to end up at a higher end place, because of the fact that tips are percentage based. If I can sell you a $15 mixed drink as opposed to a $6 mixed drink, where do you want to work? I can make $3 off that $15 drink, or I can make a buck and change off that $6 drink. So if you want to make a career out of it, then it makes sense to go to a higher end place where everything is more expensive, especially because that will help you pay for vacations, insurance, whatever you have, bills, you want to fix your house, you want to buy a new bike, you want to, anything you want to do. Of course, it's easier with more money. You're going to make more money going to a higher end place. But if you are married, see, it's almost a catch-22 because you said you can siphon off your spouse's insurance through their job and things like that. But that can go down its own rabbit hole, because if spouse makes 100 grand and gets this, that, and the other for benefits, and you're at the restaurant and you make 50 grand, some people who are the ones making 100 grand might look over at some point and go, man, you're only bringing in 50 and we've got another kid on the way, or we've got college we're going to have to pay for soon, or Billy wants to play baseball this year or football and we have to buy this, we have to buy that, we have to pay for training, we have to do all these different things. There's more to it than just the money. There's real life.
Point you bring up. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's where it gets a little bit more unique and the details are a little more obscure. It's using your example of, one spouse making 100 grand and the other making 50. In my eyes, I'm like, shit, that's a household income of 150 grand. That's a fuckload of money that you can live off of. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not that good. Maybe it's 45 and it's 20,000. So yeah, exactly. You're right. I guess there's a little bit more context that goes into it.
Exactly. But at the same time, I mean, a majority of people just in general, but also the ones that we worked with, are college students. They get the job because it's typically flexible with their hours. It's an easy way to make money. If you break down the tips into an hourly income, it's one of the best jobs you can get with not much of a background. You don't have to have a degree in anything. You don't have to have taken an online course. You don't have to be certified. You just walk in with an application and hopefully get interviewed, hopefully get hired, and then boom, suddenly you're making 15, 20 bucks an hour.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the arguments I've always made too, as for people that need the flexible schedules, that need to work minimal hours, that don't have a lot of experience, high school students, college students, you probably at that point in their lives, you will not find a higher per hour wage than working in a restaurant, at
Absolutely.
that point in their life.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you think about it, if you don't have a degree in anything, if you're 18, 19, 20, 21, whatever, what jobs are you going to apply to? You're going to work at Walmart, Target, the little mom and pop, whatever store. Well, how much are they all going to pay you? Minimum wage. You don't get tips. You don't get, man.
Rate.
Yeah, if you're working at Walmart or Costco, Costco actually takes pretty good care of their employees, actually, from what I've heard. So, but if you're working at just average business X, you don't have someone saying, you did a really good job, here's 20 bucks. And then 15, 20, 30 minutes later, you don't have another person say, yeah, you did a really good job, here's 10 bucks. You don't have that. You just have, here's your pretty mediocre paycheck every 2 weeks.
Good point. So from a organizational perspective, management perspective, business perspective, would you just chalk this up as that's the nature of the business, is we're just going to deal with turnover? Or do you think there's a solution to where, these 18-year-olds that maybe don't want to go to college, drop out of college, or that like what they're doing well enough that they want to continue doing it? Is there a way to bridge that into, if they don't want to be management, I'm talking, just serving and bartending, is there a way to bridge that to where it makes it more attractive to stay there beyond 5 years or so?
I will unfortunately answer that with a question back at you in a moment, after I say, I read a little while back, there was a report based on cost of living, and it was, how much money do you have to make in order to be happy? Which is a very, how do you define happy? All right, well, the way
Subjective.
they
It's
defined
very
it,
subjective.
in this was, all your bills are paid every month. You know, if you have a car payment, you're paying the car off every month. You're not stressing over money necessarily. And I think they said something like being able to take either 1 or 2 vacations a year, which, excuse me, I think for most people, it's been almost a year since my last vacation. So to some people, 1 vacation a year doesn't sound like a lot. Whereas to me, I'd be, really, 1 vacation a year? That's pretty awesome. Where do I sign up? But that was their definition of happy. Everything's taken care of. You can go on vacation more or less when you want to, and you can make a random splashy purchase every now and then. So for Sacramento County, that number was $110,000. Now there are jobs, I know, there are jobs out there that more than likely require degrees, and not even a 4-year degree, at least a 2-year degree, or maybe you got your AS in something. There are jobs that will afford you that lifestyle. Yes, you have to go to school for them. Yes, you have to work hard, but you can eventually work your way there. Or in some cases, depending on what it is, what field you're getting into, you don't even have to work your way there in the job. You can start there, which if you're one of those people, that's amazing and good for you. You found something awesome to do. So if we go by that number, if we go by $110,000, if you're running the restaurant, if you're running the company, corporate level, what have you, how can you provide that for me?
That's a big number.
That's, I mean, so that burger that I just ran out to you, instead of it being $8.99, it's got to be $28.99, and nobody wants to pay for that. I mean, it better be a damn good burger if I'm paying $30 for it. But I think there is just too much of a schism in the industry at a majority of the places to make it to where people want to do it as a career. Or I shouldn't say want to do it, because some people do want to do it because you do actually enjoy the job. You enjoy talking to people. You enjoy all of the little different things that are required of you in the job. But at the end of the day, if you go home and, oh, rent's due and I've got my car payment, which one do I choose to be late on? Not everybody experiences that. Some do experience it. I know many people over the course of my time doing it that asked to cover shifts specifically because, dude, I hope I can make another $100 because I've got this, I've got that. I don't
So
know that in.
I think there's a little, I mean, I think there needs to be some flexibility on what that definition of, I guess, a happy lifestyle would be.
Sure.
And I wish I had a little bit more perspective of what I was making as, a bar manager, general manager in my current context, because I was married for, 8, 9, or it was about 9 years. Married for 9 years, and I was making more than I am now, but I always felt like we spent more than we needed to. But I guess, my other half's definition of what it took to be happy was different than mine. Now that I'm single, I got, it's a single dad with 3 kids, nothing to sneeze at, still takes a lot of income. But my definition of happy now, like, I drive a night, I have 2 cars, but one of my cars is a 1999 Toyota Camry. Like, it has a cassette player in it. You know what I mean? Like, And that's the car that I probably drive 75% of the time. That car has shown me that I will probably never spend more than $3,000 to $5,000 on a car again, because there is nothing that my 99 Camry gives me that, or doesn't give me, I guess, that my 2008 Expedition does, other than space. My Expedition gives me space, so when me and my
Sure.
3 kids need to go somewhere, Camry stays home, and the Expedition, we got a little bit more space. I mean, it's got like an aftermarket, CD player in there with, some aftermarket speakers, but no more than $500 in audio upgrades, But when I'm driving, all I really care about is it going to get me there? Do I have music?
Right, right. And pretty much as soon as you started getting into the car aspect of it, it made me realize that I didn't want it to sound like, well, for one thing, that that we said beforehand, the definition of happy is different for everyone. But at the same time, if you are in a 2-bedroom apartment with someone that you hate, but that's what you have to do because you know what? It was a cheaper apartment. It was in a not as great part of town. It's a little farther away than you have to drive.
But the argument to that too is that 2-bedroom apartment in Sacramento County, split in half, costs as much as my 3-bedroom house mortgage, 45 minutes, 30 minutes outside of Sacramento County. Like, to me, I'm willing to drive to pay less to live by myself versus, if I wanted to rent an apartment in Sacramento County right now, like, I would need that roommate. It's going to be a much smaller place. You know what I mean?
But you almost have the opposite of that argument, because I think almost everyone would prefer to live in a house by themselves as opposed to being in an apartment with a roommate. Now,
That's what I mean. But I had to sacrifice a 45-minute drive to whatever the hell I wanted to do to be there. You know what I mean?
That's true, but you also, didn't you say that it's actually a cheaper living situation for you?
It's cheaper because I'm willing to drive the 45 minutes to get to work, the 45 minutes to get to the kids' practices.
Right. So while the commute is worse, your living situation in and of itself is astronomically better. And there is a point where those even out, or one comes out ahead of the other.
Right.
I don't know that I would want to drive 45 minutes somewhere every
And a lot of
day,
people
or even
don't.
a
A lot of
quarter.
people don't.
Yeah, yeah. And that ties into having to make sacrifices in terms of, oh, this crappy apartment with some roommate I found on Craigslist who I don't know what he's doing in his room, but it sounds really strange, or he smells funny, or any list of things. Not a lot of corporate establishments allow for a very high bar in terms of living arrangements. A lot of people live at home with their parents. A lot of people might live on campus if they're going to a college. But, look at the number of people that we worked with that were probably living below where they wanted to because that's all they could afford. They didn't get to afford to go out to have a nice meal at this steakhouse once a week or once a month, or no, I can't come over because I don't have gas money. My car is gonna run out of gas and I gotta save it for my next shift. It's
Yeah, there's a little bit of fluidity there between and that's where it becomes more subjective. Is I guess it's what's important to the person. Where, like, for me, I
yeah,
don't mind driving 45 minutes. It costs me $20 to go into town and back, but my mortgage is lower. But at the same time, like, I'm also punting. I don't go out to eat at restaurants at all. I probably go out to fast food a handful of times a month. I crock pot the shit out of everything I eat. So there's different sacrifice. Like, I drive a 99 Camry and I don't go out to eat at all versus the people that want to live closer to town that, I don't want to commute and I want to go out to eat, but I'm also going to live a lot closer and I don't have to waste my time driving. It's kind of give
Yeah.
and take. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
Some people might be more than happy with the accommodations that they are able to achieve based on working at their local TGI Chili Bees. Some people might work at a very some people might work at a very upscale place where they can pull in $1,000 a week only working 3 nights, and maybe they're still not happy. Sometimes it depends on what you're used to, the style of living you're used to. Sometimes it is you have a lot of expenses, a lot of bills, whatever the case. But the definition of happy is definitely different for some people. I would probably be more than happy in just a 1-bedroom studio. I don't need to have do I need to have a separate room for my kitchen, things like that? Maybe not. I don't live in a studio and I never have, so I don't necessarily know the answer to that. But at the same time, would I also need a 5-bedroom house? It's
Yeah, it's
hard to
super
know.
interesting that you bring that up. I mean, it's becoming more clear that it really comes down to the individual. And I'm glad you brought up the comparison to a studio because, I have 3 kids. So to have, to live as a single source of income in a house where we can all live comfortably, I do have to drive 30 or 45 minutes outside of town to be able to afford that kind of lifestyle. But if it was just me, I mean, not me, single dad, it's just me, no kids, I'd be perfectly happy in the studio. My bed's 5 feet from where I'm talking to you right now. The fucking stairs that I have to take to get to my kitchen are a pain in my ass, and I never want to get a 2-story house again. Like I
Big
would
true.
probably be happy in a studio, but because I have kids, that's never going to work for me, you know? But there are some people too that they put a lot of importance in what they drive. They like that,
Very
maybe it's the way they grew
materialistic,
up or
yeah.
whatever, materialistic, which isn't always a bad thing, but, driving something that makes you happy, that makes you feel good about yourself, that might cost more money. I can give a fuck what I pull up in because I know I'm going to hop out of the car and be inside anyways. As long as I have music when I'm driving, that's really all I care about. And my, that 99 Camry that has a cassette player, I got this little cassette with the wire coming out that I can plug into my phone and I got music. So, it's really, I guess that's where the conversation needs to go is what's the bare minimum you need to make you happy to make it to where you can afford to continue this. But that's really not, a conversation where management needs to have the conversation, an organization or something that says, oh, you only need this. Someone has to decide that on their own. But honestly, I really think that, going back to my original point is if the bartenders are the one driving the revenue for, I mean, they're the ones in the boiler room making sure that that engine's running for the restaurant, that revenue is being brought in. Why are we not taking care of bartenders at least the same that we would take care of managers? For me, management was my direction because I was never going to be, I don't have the personality or the skill set to be a bartender, but I do to be a manager and be in a leadership position. So that was more fit for me and my skill set. Someone with a different skill set that's not meant to be a manager, but has the skill set to make just as big of an impact as a manager, why are we not taking care of them in the same way?
Well, if hypothetically I am someone that is capable of doing both. I currently bartend, but my higher ups think you'd be a great manager. You should look into it. Let me set you up with my district person, whoever. I want you to talk to them, see what it entails. And I'm open to it. And I talk to them and they say, yeah, we see the same things in you. Here's what you would get out of it. So if you're saying bartenders should be taken care of ballpark in the same manner that managers are taken care of. If
I
I'm that
genuinely
person,
think that. I genuinely think
okay,
that.
And so if I'm the person that can hypothetically do both, what is the argument for me to want to manage? I can be behind the bar. I can be social with these guests, these regulars that I've hopefully made. I can be mixing drinks. I can be bullshitting. I can be talking sports. I can be talking reality TV. I can be, unfortunately, talking about everything existing in the real world. Or I could be, Jason wants Monday off and Tuesday, but I don't have anybody to cover those shifts. You've got that, and you've got, all right, the liquor order's coming in. I need somebody to be able to put it away. And I've got this manager who wants to do this, that, and the other. And I've got, oh, well, this server or this host is doing this. I've got this person in the kitchen who, dude, why does it take you 15 minutes to cook a rare steak? You have so many other responsibilities and so many other things to be keeping track of, to be supervising, and to be making sure they're at a high level. Bartending isn't exactly stress-free. You have to make a good drink. You have to make it in a reasonable amount of time. You have to be social with people. Not everybody likes to do those things. But again, we're saying hypothetically, I am someone that is capable of managing and bartending. I don't know that there's an argument that would convince me to go into management if I'm getting the same benefits. If I'm getting paid vacations and health insurance, and I'm making tips, and I can work 4 or 5 days a week, 5-hour, 6-hour, 7-hour shifts, as opposed to being there at 4 in the morning or 6 in the morning, or staying until 3 in the morning as the closing manager. Some people like that because of their lifestyles and what time of day they like to be up and that sort of thing. But there's more freedom being the bartender, that I think if you do give them those benefits, there'd be less incentive to move up, because isn't the point of moving up to better yourself? And if
True.
I'm getting the same out of this as you are, why move up when I can hang out, essentially?
2 reasons. Number 1, power. People want to be in a position of power. And if you're in a bartender position, you don't have that. Some people just want to be in a manager position just to have that power, just to say, I have the bigger stake in the upper hand. Some people do.
And
The other
that's
reason is the skill set that it takes to grind that kind of work out day in, day out. I would never, ever make a good bartender because I have like spurts where I can be very social and very extroverted, and I can be good at that. You know, I can learn how to pour drinks. I suck at pouring drinks right now. You know, you throw me at a bar right now, I can have a good conversation with someone, but their margarita's gonna taste like shit. But I could have spurts of that kind of conversation, that kind of extroversion. But I can't do that 3, 4, 5 nights a week. I'm more of an analytical guy. I like to be in front of a computer screen and building spreadsheets and looking at metrics and saying, how can we, you know, looking at the marketing strategy, saying, how can we generate revenue, drive traffic? Like that's, you know, bigger picture planning and thought processes fits my style more. I would never want to be a bartender for that, just because I can't be immersed in that kind of situation that many days. I'm not that social. I like talking to you one on one. I don't like talking to 15 of you at the same time one on one. Especially when you're
right.
all
See,
telling
and
me that
that's,
that margarita tastes like shit.
well, you know, it's tequila, not vodka. So,
Oh shit! Is that what I did wrong?
you know, yeah, yeah. Uh, and see, and that's what works for you. But I feel like if the hypothetical question is, why can't we take care of the bartenders the same as managers? If you do have someone who is interested in moving up, some people would lose interest in that. Some people might still want that power or some of the other intricacies that management brings, and they might still want that promotion. But if you like talking to people at all, or you like that part of the job, and you're getting the same benefits as a manager, I feel like it makes a harder case to be promoted beyond that. There's obvious reasons to be promoted from host to server, whatever, to bartender, because it's more money. But once you make the benefits equal, I mean, I would have loved to have a paid vacation every once in a while. That would have been awesome. But how does the company provide that? Where is that money coming from?
Let me ask, how many times, I mean, through our, how long did we work together? 5 years? How many times through our 5 years working together do you think we promoted a bartender into a bartender position because, I mean, it never, okay, so I guess that situation wasn't in place, but how many of those people do you think would have been looking at bartending as, do I get benefits? Do I have health insurance? Do I have a retirement plan versus do I just make more money or because that's what I want to do? Managers ultimately have that decision as to they're the ones that invite the bartenders into place, right? So there's, again, that power play comes into effect. Managers are the decision makers. They decide who's in the bar and who's not. They're still the ones that make the schedule. But I don't think there's any one bartender that I've ever promoted into the bar that was thinking about retirement plans and healthcare. It was more about, the experience and how much do they make. But it's 5 years down the road that they start thinking about, I don't have these benefits. Now I need to start thinking about it's the next level that they want to get at. Bartending, from going from a server to a bartender, it's that next step and that next level that they want to get at. Once you're, feeling, you're in that place where you're comfortable and you're making money, but now you're thinking about, I don't have benefits. What's that next step? If I'm 40 and I'm bartending, do I need to start thinking about retirement? Do I have retirement? And most 24-year-olds aren't going to think about an IRA or anything like that and taking care of their own shit. But, if there's a lot of managers get into a management position because of the benefits. That's where they want to be. I just think there's maybe not so much bringing in an application flow or bringing in more of an applicant pool, more candidates, but I think bringing in the benefits offers retention. Maybe
Absolutely.
now that we're spitballing this, because now we're like brainstorming like ideas and theories and stuff. Baseball has.
We are going to change the restaurant industry.
We are. I know, right? We're changing the world as we know. Baseball has that 10-year mark where you are fully vested when you hit 10 years. Okay. That means you have full benefits for the rest of your life once you hit 10 years. What do you think about that? Something similar, some sort of similar model in the bar where, because I don't know, I promote this server to a bartender. I don't know if they're going to be good at it or not. They could be the shittiest bartender of all time. They might want to be a bartender just because they say they're a bartender. They're not going to last more than 2 years. But if they do, and they last 5 years, or they get to that 10-year mark and I don't want to let them go, should I have that flexibility or at least have that kind of umbrella over them that says, look, I'm not just giving you the position and all the tips and all the wages and all the benefits, but now you can have it in perpetuity if you stay with us. Like, I guess the big question we're asking is, why do bartenders ever decide that they want to leave that position? If you're 25, if you're 30, what changes from the second you wanted to be a bartender to the second that you no longer want to be a bartender? What is that? What's that delta right there?
I think, while this isn't probably a direct answer to that question, it still more or less answers it. I think you mentioned baseball players becoming tenured, essentially. I think if there was something like that with a lot of the corporate establishments, that would definitely change being able to hold on to people, because we've said that your average employee is, your average employee is fresh out of high school, or they've been in college a couple years, whatever the case. Odds are they're young and they just need a few bucks right now. This isn't my career. I don't want to be a server. I don't want to be a bartender. That's not real money. That's not a real job. There's that stigma around it. But if you did have establishments that said, hey, if you bartend here for 5 years, which sounds like a long time, but once you're into it, and especially if you're young and in school, it's really not that long of a time. But if you had establishments that said, if you bartend for 5 years, you can get X, Y, and Z. I don't know that that would be possible to give to every bartender who works there, the one who's been here for a month and works 2 mid shifts a week because reasons. But if you have someone that's there 5 days a week, every week, they're dedicated, they're great, they have regulars, they do this, they do that. I think all of the higher ups in one way or another would be able to find a way to make it happen, to take care of that person in terms of benefits or in terms of, you know, whatever it may be. There's money for that. I don't know that all parties involved would find the money for everyone, but to find money for the occasional tenured person, I think that would give someone, if you haven't graduated college yet, or maybe if you have, you majored in whatever the hell you majored in. Oh, dude, the job market for business sucks right now. I can't, you know, I'm trying to get in. I'm doing this. Nobody's called me back. Nobody's emailing me. Nobody's talking to me. But if I stay here for another year, another 2 years, I could get X, Y, and Z out of it. That does definitely change the equation. So I think,
so too.
I think, yeah,
and,
I like the
there's a little
tenureship
bit,
idea.
I think there's something there because, and I think it becomes like almost like a multifaceted tool where, you know, you have a bartender for 5 years. There's a reason that they've been there for 5 years, right? Either A, they're damn good
Hopefully.
at what they're doing,
Yeah.
or B, you have some managers that really don't like to manage. This kind of forces both equations. Like the bartenders that are damn good at what they do, maybe they stay another 10 years. Maybe they retire with that organization. B, those managers that don't like to manage, it forces them to manage them out before that 10-year position, before they get that fully vested time in. I think there's just, I think there's something there that, you know, it's a conversation that needs to happen because the status quo of how it's always been for the last forever and 26 days, like it's something's got to change. It's, you know, the bartenders that I always was like, you know, I couldn't wait to leave or I didn't mind if they left. They were never very long-term bartenders. But if someone's there for 5 years, I mean, if they're there for 5 years, that's because I like them bartending. That means they're either really good at what they do, they bring some sort of value to the table, or they have a full bar every time they come in.
Right. When you have someone that you can count on to be back there certain times, certain days, it's easier for them to have already made regulars probably.
Hold on just a second. I think my battery died on my D.
Oh.
I'm recording now. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, maybe it becomes a conversation of where that executive's grassroots are. Maybe it's, to your point, if they were hired from the outside, if they're a Harvard graduate, you know, Harvard Business School graduate, and they slid into a C-suite position, then they're probably going to have a lot more detachment. They're not going to care. But if I'm, you know, if I'm a CEO that started as a host and worked my ass off from the ground up, you know, I worked my ass off to become a server, worked my ass off to become a bartender, you know, and I loved bartending, but it just didn't give me what my family needed, you know, so I became a bar manager, and I was good enough at that I became an area director, and then a regional manager, and I worked my way, you know. So this conversation that we're having right now, maybe it doesn't make an impact tomorrow. Maybe this isn't a conversation the industry needs to hear tomorrow, but maybe we're planting that seed to the kid that is going to be a bartender, 19 years old right now, that's going to be a bartender 2 years from now, that wants to, make an impact on the industry, that loves what he does, that does 5 years of serving to become a bartender, does that for 5 to 10 years to become a bar manager. And, eventually when he's 48 years old, he becomes the vice president of operations and says, you know what, the one thing that fueled my motivation was that this one conversation that these two guys had on the shore of Folsom Lake that, maybe that was the spark that lit the change that happened. It's really just, it's funny that how things happen. It takes one person to see a spark that lights a flame, and maybe this is that conversation that needs to happen. But I definitely think, even if it doesn't happen tomorrow, it's a conversation that needs to happen in every organization. And I wouldn't expect the world to change. I wouldn't expect, even 6 months from now, every tenured bartender to become endowed with a full benefits package. But maybe that starts with, after 5 years, you get 2 weeks of vacation. And then after 10 years, you get the same health plan as the managers. And then, 20 years after that, it's, hey, after 5 years, you become fully vested and you get a retirement plan that matches 25 cents on the dollar or something. You know what I mean? It's a conversation that needs to happen. And honestly, it becomes a competition game. It's, my competitors are offering, 2 weeks of vacation for bartenders when I'm only offering minimum wage. Like, okay, let me match that 2 weeks. It takes one person to say, I'm going to give my bartenders 2 weeks of vacation a year. And then every other business is going to do the same thing. Then it takes another business that says, you know what? On top of the 2 weeks of vacation, I'm going to offer comprehensive medical. Maybe they get free dental cleanings a year on top of the 2 weeks of vacation. It takes time for that change to happen, but it needs to happen with a conversation. And really what this conversation that we had tonight, I think at least plants the seed. If it reaches enough people and enough ears in enough positions that can make an impact, I think we just started something big, even if it takes 20 to 30 years for it to happen. Because I'll tell you what, COVID or not, people want bars to open up. I can't have schools closed and bars closed at the same time. One of the two have to be opened.
See, I thought when you mentioned, maybe this being the conversation to spark the fire, whatever. I thought you were this close to quoting Rogue One when they say, "We are the spark of hope that will light the fire that will burn the First Order down." I thought you were going there for a split second.
I blew a golden opportunity, dude. I blew it. Maybe I'll do that in post-production.
But okay, all right, yeah, just randomly dub over yourself and what. But see, and I think it is kind of ironic that this conversation got to that point, because, not to get political, but the real world climate that we live in, not talking about restaurants, but literally what's going on in America, let's just say there's a big push for change in a few different ways. So I think it's kind of ironic that this conversation kind of went there also. Because I feel like if I worked with someone when I was still in the industry, if I worked with someone that told me the things we were talking about, yeah, hell yeah, I want that. That sounds great. That would be amazing. So, yeah.
You know what? What's funny about that is, when I was working with you, when I was in the industry, that thought never crossed my mind. My idea and my vision, it was so, I hate to say it, but it was like brainwashed, or it so closely matched the company's vision that there was no personal thought, there was no existential vision or, long-term thinking on my own, because I was always thinking about what the company wanted is what I wanted, because we were so, they're signing my paychecks, they're giving me my benefits. This is where the alignment comes from. But, I'm over 2 years, just over 2 years now, removed from the industry altogether, that being able to clear my mind and think objectively, but still have that same, but still being so familiar with the industry that I have that mentality and the way of thinking that I can really, it's just fascinating, dude, because my way of thinking 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, completely different than the way it is now. But
because you're looking at that from the outside.
It's objective.
If
I have an objective way of looking at it now, and it's really fascinating to me, because these were never, and maybe it's thoughts because I knew it wasn't realistic at the time, but that was taking somebody else's word for it, not from a business owner's word for it. But God, I just think about so many of the greatest bartenders that I worked with that I lost because bartending wasn't enough for them. You know what I mean? And those are the best bartenders. Those were the ones that, it didn't just break your heart as a person, but it broke your heart as managing a business. Fuck, that's a blow. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know.
Maybe one day we'll change the restaurant world. This is September 23rd, 2020, the year that will go down in infamy for many reasons. But hey, maybe
this conversation, and it's great. It's recorded, dude. There's no going back on this conversation, so it's going to be posted.
There's the delete
button out there.
Yeah.
We had so many good conversations tonight that there's no way in hell. This is going to be, it's going on YouTube. We're going to got a podcast going. I'm going to make sure to distribute it through as many channels as we can. But this is, I think, a conversation that needs to be seriously considered in every organization. The status quo has been the status quo for way too long, and there needs to be at least some consideration for change. And, hopefully this is the conversation that plants the seed of change for many organizations down the road.
For sure. I think this will be almost more of a part one as opposed to just an episode.
Erroll, I'm taking that as your commitment for another episode. So, I had 20 to 30 questions probably lined up for you, and I don't think we got past question number 1, which is, what is your origin story? So how do you feel about coming back in a couple of weeks and maybe finishing things up?
Oh, you think we'll finish it in just one more? Okay, sure.
We could try.
Sure.
Maybe it turns into part 3. I'm fine with that. Star Wars went to part 8, 9.
9.
Yeah, I think we should plan that. Erroll, it's been great talking to you tonight. Top Shelf Nation, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you stayed to the end of the episode, because we had some fire conversations. Some really in-depth shit. So if you caught on to this and your manager or your business owner, your restaurant owner, bar owner has not heard this, please share the episode. Right here, I am Erroll, and you can find him on Instagram, Twitter. Erroll, where else are you? Is that about it?
Gosh, I guess. We can get into all the gaming platforms, but when it comes to strictly social media, I'm Erroll.
Start with those two. Sounds like he's going to be back in a few weeks. Erroll, God, it's been great talking to you about this stuff tonight. And guys, just so you know, Erroll has circumvented the COVID situation, and he's been in a couple of different industries. So when he does come back, he's going to have a little bit of perspective of what it's like to work through COVID in a different industry. We could talk about kind of how some of those skills, translated into some of the other industries as well. And one of the big things that I had honestly planned on talking to him tonight was, he was always a higher preference for serving over bartending, and I kind of wanted a little bit more of insight on that as well. So hopefully you'll jump back in with us here in a couple of weeks. And Erroll, you got anything you want to say? Hold on. just so you have a couple of weeks to think about this too for a part 2 question. But for tonight, if you can give any new and upcoming bartenders some tips, tricks, words of advice, what would you give them?
Don't be afraid to take your time with everything. And I'm not saying move slow, but I'm saying when you're new to it, odds are you're not making that drink as fast as someone else. You're not having that same level of conversation as someone else. And you're also not doing those at the same time like someone else. So I feel like if you know that you're not necessarily filling someone's shoes right off the bat, if you can find a way to be you, if you can be social and take a little bit longer to make a drink, odds are people are going to like that. And if that's your style, then you need to stick with that as opposed to thinking you need to do things as fast as possible and do everything all at once.
Huge words of advice. God, I couldn't have put a bigger stamp of approval on those myself. Top Shelf Nation, it's been great seeing you tonight. Check back in a couple of weeks. We're going to have a couple of returning guests, including Erroll here. I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Find him on Twitter. Find him on Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube, the podcast. Find us here at Top Shelf Talk on Instagram, Twitter. We're also on Facebook as well. Top Shelf Nation, have a fantastic evening.